right, let's get started. Welcome everybody. Awesome. Yes, this is Andrew Shields, CEO of Naut Normal, and this is Naut Normal Fridays at 5. So thanks for coming in, and thanks for checking out my show. So this is the first episode of my new Naut Normal show. Every single Friday at 5, we're going to be here having some interesting guests or maybe just some free-form thought discussions, about space, about everything that comes with space, lives in space, can be in space. So let's go on from there. So, this is great. I'm happy to be here, happy to share this with you, and we got a special guest with us today. So, Patrick Voss, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hey, everybody. I'm Pat Voss. I am a longtime radio broadcaster from Chicago. I have a burning desire to have space exploration all around me, and I cannot wait to get this interview started for Naut Normal.
Yes, fun stuff. Awesome. Yeah, I love that spirit. I love just engulfing yourself in everything space exploration, because it's phenomenal. Like, you have to love it. It's hard.
So much fun.
Yeah, it's hard not to. So yeah, let's jump right in. So just to start, what initially got you interested in space? I mean, that's such a great question for so many people. Just what was it? What was the first thing that just it brought you in? What was it?
For me, when I was a little kid, I mean, having little model toys of the space shuttles and trying to act like I was sending myself into space and having a great time being that Neil Armstrong character or some other well-known astronaut, right? You have Buzz Aldrin. You have so many great astronauts, and I learned these from my father. My father was big into space. I was hearing these names float around, and I wanted to know what that meant. As a young child, I wanted to know what it meant. So for me, what got me started? Family. I love that family can get a lot of things going in your life. I need to rely on my family throughout, whether it's my mother, my father, my brother, my wife, my daughter. All family to me, I make good connections with, and they have inspired my love of space from the beginning and encouraged me to grow that love throughout my life.
That's amazing to hear. Love it. Yeah, family can do wonderful things, especially when it comes to space. It's phenomenal to hear that you had that, that background, that history within the space industry, and it almost just lives within you. So it's hard not to take that, and really embrace it, carry it forward with you. I love hearing that. So like, your favorite thing about space, I mean, considering just how engraved, the industry and the mentality of space is within you, what's your favorite thing about it? Community, mindset, mentality, the exploration, the possibilities. What's your favorite thing about space?
The obsessiveness that the people that work for space exploration companies like SpaceX, NASA, Blue Origin, Virgin Galactic, they're obsessed with this. And I love that. And I actually this is a little while ago, I did a video. I had a media school that I was attending for a little while. And a video that I did was called Obsessed. And it was about my lifestyle of trying to bounce back from diversity to make sure that I'm pushing through and getting what career I want, right? And for them, it's getting what they want. And what they want is more and more and more space exploration. So it's not going to just stop at the moon and Mars again. They're trying to make humanity a multi-planetary species. So to me, that's my favorite thing, that obsessive mindset, because of course that leads to bigger, thought processes, bigger inspiration in order to think of something someone else hasn't thought of before, thinking outside of the box, and then launch day hits and everybody's excited, including myself.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. I mean, the motivation that it brings to everybody within the community is something you really can't, take a second look to. I mean, the main thing that I see when I go to different corners or see different sides of the space community is that centralized vision of becoming something greater than ourselves, of, expanding and just growing our species like beyond, our home planet, and just getting more people up there, getting people on the moon, getting people on Mars. I mean, what's strange is that people talk about these things like every day. Like, I feel like some people out there are like, oh, nobody talks about that. They're just so passionate. Like, you hit it right on the head. Like, they are so passionate about what they do. Everybody that works there or just loves the space industry. The passion just comes with that. And on the topic of inspiration, yeah, we have to dive into the biggest event in, I think, our modern history. I mean, commercial space travel begins now. Literally, it all starts here. We're going to look back at when we have people on the moon, when we have people on Mars. We're going to look back and see this moment, this entire just manifestation of what humanity can do in a single moment. Like, we can take 4 people to space, and it's phenomenal what they were able to do. And I loved every part of it. I loved being a part of the journey, and definitely watching Countdown, which you'll see the final episode later, but it's really moving. I mean, everything up to the last, I mean, you have to agree. So what are your thoughts just on inspiration for what it means to you, and what do you think it means to us as like humans?
Man, I love that question. That is a fantastic question. Inspiration for, to me, meant that maybe other people can do this. If you have people that are like the Dr. Cheyenne Proctors and Jared and Chris Dombrowski and Haley Arsenault, you have people that are coming together for a cause that are not classically trained astronauts. They still go through intense training, which, I'm sure I would definitely want to cover with you. But I think that showing that they can do that they can go through the training, that they can do things that other astronauts can do, that is just amazing to me. And I started looking at how they looked and were they fit and how fit did they need to be. And, of course, with those first 4 episodes of Countdown and on Netflix, just watching and seeing how excited they were. And this is the biggest thing for me, is when Dr. Cheyenne Proctor got the call. Yeah. And she was on a Zoom meeting to get a call, spoilers, everybody, when she got the call to come aboard and be the pilot for this mission. That look, and I'm sorry, I love it. I drink it in every time I talk about it. Yeah. The look that she had on her face, because it was a lifetime dream of hers to do this, and understanding that it's now coming true. That takes a while to hit you. Something like that takes a long time. So what does this mean for me? People like me, people like you, people like a few folks that I know in the space industry, they're willing to now try to go forward and possibly go to space, just like these 4 did with Inspiration 4. I think it's for society as a whole. What does it mean? I don't think that people, so this is something that I'll steal a little bit from Dr. Neil deGrasse Tyson. Yeah. Dr. Tyson says something along the lines of, what do we do with the people that don't know they like science or space? And what about the people that know they don't like science or space? How do we reach them? And I think that they found an answer, and that's with Inspiration 4. Inspiration 4, no matter who you were, you knew about it. I was asking people that don't study science on a daily basis, don't have any love for space exploration, but they were paying attention to the Netflix documentary and they were paying attention to the launch. And that says something. So for me and society, I think it's a huge step forward, and that first step to really making this more and more and more accessible. That's the biggest thing for me. That's so exciting.
It really is. It's really an exciting time to be alive. I mean, and like you said it perfectly. Like, their shift in mentality when they found out and got the call that they were going to space. I mean, the way that they latched onto the idea, they were able to progress and push through so many things. At a foundational level, it's a rigorous training program. I mean, the amount that they had to learn in, the short amount of time that they did it, is phenomenal. To go through that intense training, to not necessarily have, all the qualifications that NASA had set, master's degrees, PhDs, and just like so many things. And so I think I agree with you. As a society, it shows us that the qualifications are so much lighter than we ever imagined they are. I mean, I'm thinking about the kids that watched Inspiration 4 and the kids that are watching this Netflix documentary and seeing what is possible. That's, I think, what moves me the most, is we're building a future generation that's going to evolve like with this idea that space travel is possible. I can go to space. It's no longer a hope. It's no longer a wish. It's no longer a dream or a fantasy. It's real. It's here. And it just happened. So.
One thing you did say, though, is the rigorous training and the fact that they didn't have as much time as career astronauts have to really get themselves integrated into this program. So what that tells you, or what it tells me at least, is that they picked 4 great minds. They picked 4 fast learners, and they, because they could have replaced any of the crew. They really could have. Any of the 4 could have easily been replaced if they weren't learning fast enough, if they were just not picking things up, or, because you really need somebody, the crew chief, the pilot, you had Chris Dombowski being the random pick. Mm-hmm. And then you had Haley Arsenault from St. Jude being the 4th pick. So I think when you look at that overall, you see a diverse crowd, and all of which have a great mind. And that is what I treasure the most, is a great mind. Making sure that you're staying ahead of the curve as far as mentally, make sure that you're studying whatever excites you. That's my biggest thing. Yeah. Make sure you're doing that, because one day this could be you.
Precisely. Back to that great saying, it's better to be prepared for an opportunity and not have one than to have an opportunity and not be prepared. So, phenomenal. Just a great thing to be a part of, a great thing, even for us here on Earth to be a part of. It's exciting. So, Inspiration 4 itself was moving. I mean, this was the first time that I saw something, space related on my local news channel. And they even talked about it. Hey, Inspiration 4 is launching soon. And yeah, I was sitting there with my dad, who, was my main inspiration for getting into space. And we watched the whole launch, but for them to have it on our local news channel here in Kansas City, I think that's the beginning. That's really where it starts, is exposure, and getting that message out. And as motivating, as exciting, as as touching as that whole thing was. And I think you're absolutely right. They picked 4 great minds, people, who could learn fast and be there and really push themselves. I think, even if they weren't that way normally, I think just the thought of this happening really pushed them further, and I think there is something that happens psychologically when that possibility even enters your mind. So I think that's definitely something we can touch up on, maybe a little bit later when we get into some psychology discussion on that. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to talk about. But the question is, when it comes to Inspiration 4, civilian spaceflight, the commercialization of space, what's next? Where do we go from here? This is the foundation. This is where everything is building off of for civilians going to space. What's next?
What's next? I think I'm going to have to go with making sure that we as a society are taking the next step and not letting the Inspiration 4 type of message die. That's the biggest thing for me. What's next is making sure that we're having a half on, half off crew. And by that, I mean not only doing more of what we've done with Inspiration 4, but also moon landings, with half the crew being career astronauts and the other half of the crew being picks. that are trained, well-trained picks. That is what's next. Also, I really think that it matters that people for Inspiration 4, SpaceX, NASA, they use St. Jude as a fundraiser, right? They fundraise for St. Jude, and I believe it was somewhere just over $250 million, if I'm correct. That is amazing to see for space exploration, for commercial space flight. That is amazing to see as a first step. For myself, I actually have something going, if that's okay. I mean, I'd like to introduce it.
Yeah, definitely. Go right ahead. Go right ahead.
Today, I dropped my petition to actually join a future all-civilian space crew for SpaceX and NASA. I dropped a petition on all of my social media, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. It's everywhere. So I'm trying my hardest to get to space because I have a love for space exploration at my core. And I think seeing people like, at least with Cyan Proctor, who Dr. Proctor has a direct link to the space program. Dr. Proctor's father, in Guam, I believe, when the radio towers were going down for Apollo 11's hub to come back. And Dr. Proctor's father did the math, did the coordinates so that he could send the ships to go recover the capsule for Apollo 11 coming back into the ocean. Yeah. So that, to me, is an amazing story, right? Great connection, awesome. And that put off a light in my head. The light bulb went off. And that is, I would like to, because again, I actually do have a connection to the Apollo program. And one of my relatives, my grandfather's cousin, is the former NASA astronaut Gus Grissom, who passed away in 1967. There was the fire in the cockpit, killed himself and the two other astronauts, but he was trying to advance human space flight. He was trying to advance society in space. And in 1969, 2 years later, as we all know, famously, Neil Armstrong, first man on the moon, sets foot on the moon. We all know the story. I would like to continue the Grissom legacy. And I would like to not necessarily go to the moon. I'm not saying I'm knocking going to the moon, but I would definitely like to do an Inspiration 4 style orbit around the Earth, a 3-day orbit, making sure that we're doing different things in the capsule, making sure that we're interacting with people, because I actually have a fundraiser in mind that is willing to back me in this, and that is NAMI, National Alliance of Mental Illness. That is a great organization. I'm here in Chicago, as you can tell. I'm here in Chicago, and NAMI Chicago has actually volunteered to back me in this and help with the fundraising efforts so that we can break the stigma on mental illness, because I think that we can get into why that has kind of a personal ring with me, but it definitely does. So for me, pairing up a petition to go on a future civilian space flight and having NAMI Chicago backing me as a fundraising effort for the main fundraiser for that mission, as well as some of my friends who decided to get in, I've had people like Robert Duran Jr., who is the son of the famous Roberto Duran, Hands of Stone. You know, he is going to be making a video trying to say why he thinks I should go into space. And I have other friends of mine that are trying to do the same. So I'm trying everything I can to get there. And I'm hoping that one day that 3-2-1 ignition is for me.
Phenomenal story. And yeah, Gus Grissom, living legend. I mean, I admire you, just living on, like, for that pursuit, for that, venture beyond, the final frontier, and everything that humanity is seen as almost like a barrier for too long. It's phenomenal to hear that, people like you are just pushing so hard to get up there and get out there, because that's where it all starts. It's just, that pursuit of it, I think is where we grow, is just, and like you said, I think you said it perfectly. Don't let the mindset, the mentality, everything that came like with inspiration for it, don't let that die out. Don't let this be, just a one-off. Don't let this be like a one-hit wonder. Like this needs to become a regular thing. I do enjoy the idea of, having more civilians just on a launch, regardless whether, it be research or not, just, bring people. Like that's what we want to see, because I think it'll shift people's mentalities when, their cousins start going up, or their brothers going up, or, their family members going up. Because, I mean, you saw it within the families as well. When they were training, when they were there, I mean, you saw their shift in mentality. And they have to bear a different burden because, someone special in their life, or somebody, relative to them is going up there. And it shifts their mentality. So there's so much that goes into that, and so much just motivation. I feel it, especially when you talk about it and how passionate you are about getting there. I love every second of that, because that's what I want to see. Is I want to see more people in space. Not, I love seeing trained astronauts go to space. It's phenomenal. We need people up there doing research, creating these things, and piloting the spacecraft, being up there. Everything they've done on the ISS to date. I mean, I couldn't even have like an Excel document or a list like long enough to map everything they've done over these years, but the premise, we need to approach it from the premise of getting everyday civilians to space. People who are not career astronauts. Yeah.
Sorry about that. I was going to say that the one main thing though, for my daughter, who will be 12 in March, she shares the same love of science that I do. She shares the same love of space that I do. I can't guarantee it's to the same level of obsessiveness, but every time I see her, when I'm going to see her, she makes sure that her Planetary Society t-shirt is ready and washed, because she always wants to wear it around me. She loves that we share that. And I also would love to join a future all civilian crew for her, to show her that this is possible. You can do this. Stay focused, and something like this can happen to you. And I want her to keep, and I know I don't mean to make a pun here, but the kind of phrase "shoot for the stars," right? Yeah. And that's I want to mean that when I say that to her, because I feel that too many parents don't mean that. I feel that they say it, but in the back of their heads are thinking, well, they'll just settle, or it will be okay to do something else. But if you really want it, go after it.
I couldn't agree more. Could not agree more with that statement. I mean, literally shoot for the stars. I mean, the only limitations are the ones you put in front of you. And I really feel that. I really appreciate that approach, because it means one thing to say it, but to actually get on a rocket and show them, that you can get out there and reach for the stars. I love that. I love that so much. It's phenomenal to hear. And it really starts, with the youth. I agree there as well, inspiring them to push even further than we can. And that's definitely a special mindset to have, to do it for your daughter. I appreciate that. So, yeah, so your petition's out there. You're getting everything together. I'll definitely link that in this video. Get people signing, get people on there, and we'll get that moving. Phenomenal. And so that does kind of segue into this next overarching segment. Now, this is data that I'm collecting. Us, here at Naut Normal, we're about exposure. But we have to understand there's people like you said that don't know they're into science or space, and then there's people that know they're not into it. But my question to you is, what no matter who you are, what your passions are and everything, like what should you know about space in the industry? What should you know that's going on? Inspiration 4, Starship, it's just, what are the fundamental things about space and the industry that every human on this planet should know?
I think starting off, every human should know that there is an effort going on in the space industry that is trying to relate back to things we can technologically advance with on Earth, different experiments and ways we can grow food if we're growing food in space. I hear this all the time. One thing I hear the most that it kind of irks me a bit, because I think that they have a lack of understanding right now about it, but I'm trying to help educate them on it as well, is that certain scientific experiments that happen in space on the ISS, going around the Dragon crew capsule, different things happening are to make sure that they can also happen here in different climates on Earth. Because if you have a very, very dry climate, how are you going to grow vegetables? If you have very little rain, how are you going to survive? So a lot of methods they're trying to come up with in space and in the ISS, those methods will come back. Those methods will come back to Earth and be used and implemented in ways that it is actually helping underdeveloped or struggling areas in the world. And that to me is very, very important, because I've heard, why go, study asteroids? Why go mine these? What are you doing? Well, what we're doing is trying to figure out how we can make life here better. And from that, be able to launch and advance ourselves into a multi-planetary species. That is fundamental to know if you're going to be interested or learning anything about the space program in general. Yeah. Because it does matter. That is something that they need to go after.
Without a doubt. The pursuit of it, I think, just makes life better in general. Yeah. Mentally, physically, and the technological advances that have come out of the space industry are unparalleled to nearly anything else. I mean, you can compare it to like war maybe and what that did, but I think we're moving beyond, that like mental like society or global structure, into something more where what can we bring ourselves together with? What is something that can bring every single human together? And I thoroughly believe that with every fiber of my being, that space exploration is what can bring every single humanity, like every single member of humanity together. And not only that, but inspire us to do better. Like you said, that what they're doing up there is to make life better down here. It goes without saying. I mean, just naturally that pursuit, that endeavor, that push, of humanity out towards our final frontier, without a doubt, just sets such a new like layer, foundation for us here on Earth. And I couldn't agree more. That's definitely something every human should know, is that, yeah. And the counter argument every time is we got so much going on here on Earth, why go to space? And it's fundamental within everybody's mindset that talks about, lives in it, just is a part of the space industry. The shared mindset is that we go out and explore space to make life here on Earth better. And definitely could not agree more with that. Anything else that humans should know? Just every single person should know.
Let's see. With the type of experiments, I think one thing they should know is it matters about technological advancements matter. So if you're going to advance as a species, yes, like you said, it's here on Earth, what if there's bad things happening? Why should we focus up there? But kind of as another aside to that, making sure that we're teaching critical thinking and technological advancement to younger people. That's my biggest thing. Critical thinking is huge for me, and I've tried to instill that in my daughter. So I don't mean overly pessimistic about everything. I just mean being healthily skeptical and making sure that you're testing things. If you don't have an answer for something, go find it. And that, I think, should at least inspire a generation who will be involved in space exploration of the future, because they've had these fundamentals instilled in them from a young age. And as they grow older, it won't be a deal of oh my gosh, and throw my papers up in the air, I'm done learning for right now. I want to keep learning. And that is what NASA needs. That's what Blue Origin needs. That's what SpaceX needs. They need people like that. So let's go ahead and instill that in our children in order to have that generation even come to fruition. That's what I think people should know, that they are, again, I don't want to be too harsh, not saying that they're being lazy, but I will say that teaching, not the kids, the parents, but I want to make sure that critical thinking is a foundational pillar in a child's life, because if they don't understand that pillar, it doesn't really matter what they do from there, because they're missing something fundamental to forming new ideas, thinking outside the box, holding everything they see to a certain level of scrutiny. If you don't do that, it's easy to accept something, right? If you don't believe or understand something, you might fall for everything, and that's something I hope that we don't fall into as a trap as a society.
Yeah, most definitely. Critical thinking is huge, and I think the polarization is inevitable. As we tend towards like this more like advanced like critical thinking. I mean, we're gonna have people that would rather break away from society and go live up in the mountains. And I applaud them for that, because I couldn't do it. I love technology too much. But we'll definitely see that polarization. As we advance, it's inevitable. And so a good segue beyond that is, with everything we're doing in the space industry, with inspiration for all of these amazing, incredible things happening, it seems like so fast lately. I mean, with the Starship program and civilians in space, and now just rockets going up, up and down now. What does the future look like to you?
The future to me is something, and I have to agree with Dr. Michio Kaku on this one. He said the future of space flight, the future of humanity, initially will look like a traffic jam over Mars. And the way he puts it is that, even though there's commercialization and there's commercial space flight, but then you also have billboards on Mars. I'm just kidding, of course. I don't know if that's going to happen, but for a while, making societies multi-planetary. That is something that I think is an almost absolute future, unless something somehow unseen, kind of knock on wood, prevents the space program from growing. Outside of that, it will keep growing. And when it does, the future will be hopping planets. The future will be hopping planets, building societies, making sure that those societies can seed other planets, and so on and so forth, until you start seeing someone figure out, and I hate to get kind of dorky with this, but until someone figures out how to access what we mathematically term as wormholes, and are able to go and shoot through space a little faster to get to other star systems and start colonizing or start inhabiting those star systems. Because in the end, I don't want to be very like glum. I don't want to be, downtrodden. That's not my whole message with this, right? We understand with the expansion rate of the universe that eventually other galaxies away from our own will be so far out of our purview that it's over. There will be nothing outside of the stars of our galaxy to see for future astronomers. So if by that time we're able to figure out how to traverse time or space-time in a shorter fashion to inhabit other star systems, that would be the way that we can keep humanity alive, or Homo sapiens alive, and their evolutionary chains alive into the future. Because there's a chance if we don't keep obsessively going after this, and I'm sure you've caught on to the target word by now, but if we're not about this, then I don't think that humanity lives for very much longer. I don't think that it keeps going. I think that we give way to AI then, or we give way to the next evolutionary link in the chain. So to keep Homo sapiens around for as long as possible, that to me needs to mean that we become a multi-planetary species. That is the future.
Love hearing it. I love the multi-planetary mindset, and like centralizing, I think, as many people as we possibly can around that idea is fundamental to our future. I couldn't agree more. I think, we're destined to jump between planets, and unfortunately, yeah, you said it perfectly. We really are limited by our solar system, and until we're able to manifest, some technology that can bring us between star systems, then nothing's ever really certain. So it's a start, getting off our Earth, getting people on the moon, getting people in, a refined, space station or some sort of like star base or something, and then going to Mars, putting people on there as well, just expanding our reach, our area of influence. And unfortunately we are limited by our solar system to one potentially like habitable, I would say it is habitable, but not like to our standards, so we have to make accommodations and then hopefully terraform it at some point. There's considerations you have to make there, but
well, I mean, terraforming Mars, yes, and we do hear the same thing. And while I agree with Dr. Tyson a bit of saying if we can turn Mars into Earth, why can't we turn Earth back into Earth? I get it. Eventually, though, Earth will cease being habitable, right? And so I think that's making another station to go to, making a station in space, making Mars our next place to go. That is a good step to go. To me, that makes the most sense.
Yeah. And I agree with that statement as well from Tyson, from Dr. Tyson. I just don't think that we'll learn how to do it until we do it somewhere else. We have the constructs, here we're doing what we can, but I think as we continue that pursuit to get people, multi-planetary, to get humans, into commercialization of space and expanding that front, I think that's when we develop a good enough mentality as an entire species to help change the Earth the way it needs to be changed. So I definitely I appreciate that answer. So yeah, beyond that, it's that multi-planetary mindset, that future, that a lot of us see, especially those heavily in tune with the space industry and just, our love for it just comes together through that. So when it comes to like the next generation or just people going about their everyday lives, not really understanding or knowing like what's going on, like to you, what is the importance of bringing awareness of the space industry to everybody?
I think we covered that a little bit earlier, but I'll say again, if young adults or young kids, bringing awareness to them about the space industry will open up their minds, I think, early on in their lives in order to consider things that they haven't quite considered in life, even at an early age. I remember the only thing that I considered when I was a young kid was about, playing baseball, playing sports, going out, being a fireman. Those things are still on the table, right? But if you really want to make a huge impact on the society as a whole, space exploration is kind of the way to do it, or being involved in the sciences. So for me, why is it important? The excitement on a child's face when they learn about Saturn, when they learn about the fact that Pluto's not a planet anymore, when they learn that Mars can be inhabited, that kind of knowledge for a young child when it's facts, it's data, it's not presupposed anything, it's not bold, incorrect assertions, right? That is a good foundation to start with a kid. So they learn early to question things. They learn early to go explore, to have that creative mindset, to not have that stamped out, right? As a young kid, don't have that stamped out. Encourage your kids' creativity, because if you do, you don't know. They could be the next astronaut landing their feet on the moon or Mars or other planets. They could be the next one calling out 3, 2, 1 ignition from base. You don't know. They could be working on the next rocket because they have creativity. They could be the next genius mathematician. You don't know. So please foster it, because if you don't, your child may not have that shot. And I want every child to have a shot, no matter what you look like, where you come from, how, that you walk funny, like all of these crazy things that people really care about, seem to care about in society, that don't matter. They don't matter. How fast can you intake things? How creative are you? And what does that combination provide for us and society, or the company that you're working for? That's what that matters for. And that's what I care about. I want the next generation of kids to be that generation that we're all saying, wow, look at the generation that those parents raised.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And that, the awareness and giving them that opportunity is so important. So important, because you really have to provide them with that foundation. I think you're exactly right. I mean, the look on a kid's face when they see Saturn, or they get to talk about planets or explore the galaxy a little bit. I mean, I know when I was a kid, I lit up, like literally just seeing the idea of our moon, the stars, and it's something that I think a lot of kids really find a passion in at an early age. And I think you're exactly right. Like, don't suppress it. Like, that you'd never know the impact that they could have if you choose, to push that in and feed into it and support them, because they could be the next big rocket engineer. They could build our future space station. They could, manifest and walk on the moon. You never know. But I think it's fundamental to just give them that opportunity to feel inspired and to jump into such an amazing community of people. Yeah.
May I say, before we move on very briefly, you're a great host. I love the questions you're asking. And you. Well, it comes from my background of, and we can hop into that here in a second if you'd like. Yeah. It comes from my background of broadcasting for, half my life, to know situational awareness and to kind of sense that out. And you really have it. I mean, you know where to go with the questions, you know how to listen. And that's something that a lot of radio hosts don't know how to do. And I've met a few of them. So I'm very glad that you're the one giving this interview.
Oh, well, thank you so much. I'm flattered. That's phenomenal. Yeah, I'm actually fairly new to this, and I've been told for quite a while, like, oh, you should do a podcast, you should have a radio. I'm like, oh, later, I'll figure it out. And it took like, engulfing myself more into the space industry and doubling down on that passion, that drive for it, and then sharing that with others. And thank you so much. Like, yeah, I thank you. This is fairly new, but that means a lot. That means a lot. Yeah, and I'd love to touch on your broadcasting background. I don't think we had a chance to talk about that very much, but I'm actually very intrigued and very interested in hearing how that all came to play.
So from a young age, I would also, and this is where it goes, what I've done in my life has been two opposite directions. One with science, which we'll hop into, and one with broadcasting. And hearing my father, who had been in the broadcasting industry in Chicago for 20 years, hearing his voice and, this is Ed Voss and you're listening to WBBM radio. You'd hear that. And I was just like, man, I want to do that. But it also started it kind of intertwined with the space program a bit, because I would hear the mission control. I would hear different shout outs being made and different call outs being made with launches. And I always kind of put myself outside of, outside of launching myself. I always put myself at mission control. I always put myself with a headset on in my room thinking this could be me one day, right? And doing that, I'll go for lunch and just really etching. And it's not really about making history. It's etching into my memory things that will never leave. That's something that once in a lifetime feeling of that kind of experience to me would never go away. Outside of that, though, after I graduated school, then I went into broadcasting, PA announcing, play-by-play announcing, doing news talk radio, political updates. I've done quite a few things. So to be able to cover what I've covered over 16 years, I think it is a lot of fun. A lot of fun. It's something that I don't regret doing because it does fit very well. But the opposite of the broadcasting career is the science background, and that I think I throw people off a bit, when I talk about it, because they say, well, yeah, you sound like a broadcaster, but where did this other thing come from? And I'm wondering, is that something you'd be interested in learning about a bit?
Yeah, most definitely. I do think it's just phenomenal to hear, you don't have, it's like so many people go down different paths, but that doesn't stop people from being so interested and so engulfed, in space and the industry and everything that's going on. And I mean, I've known servers, I've known, store clerks, I've met people that, just all around in different occupations, in different stages of their life that can truly just, you would never guess it. I mean, there is times, I'm sure, when you're doing like play-by-play announcing and you're thinking like, not one of these people know that I live and breathe space, it's, and I love that, for so long. It was harder. And, I was a musician. I was in a touring band for about 4 years, and I felt like I was the only one. Like nobody really knows. Like I'm getting so excited about these rocket launches, and I was watching them on my phone when we were on tour, and it was just it's really exciting to see, that people can live and breathe it. It's just, that's the type of inspiration and fuel that I want to just bring to everybody.
Well, that's kind of what I try to do, right? When I'm doing something, and if you don't mind, I'd like to talk about that.
Most definitely.
My original love for space exploration and science. So I was acquainted fairly well with classical physics. So the physics of the very large, Einstein's type of physics, the theory of relativity. Yeah. You have Newton. So you have general classical physics that I was acquainted with. And then I had a substitute teacher in high school that was a theoretical physicist outside of being a substitute teacher, a substitute science teacher. And he noticed that I was very, very into that class when we started speaking about physics and the way things work, how things work in our universe and planets and everything else. And he said, "Have you heard about quantum mechanics?" I said, "No, I've never heard of that term." He said, "Well, how about you read this book? How about you read up a little bit on quantum mechanics, the science and the physics of the very small subatomic particles and the such. How about you read that? And then you come talk to me. I'm going to give you my email." And I did. And then he introduced me after I read A Universe from Nothing by Lawrence Krauss. Mm-hmm. I've read a few books from Dr. Neil deGrasse Tyson, Michio Kaku, and I started really getting into how they're into space, and also with Dr. Krauss, how they're into the world of the subatomic particles and smaller. Mm-hmm. So after being introduced to Dr. Krauss, I was convinced to further my background with him in physics and cosmology, with my main focus being in quantum mechanics. because that was my new love. That was the thing to do now, even though I had this want to be in space. And yeah, sure, I wanted to do that. And I had a general understanding of classical physics, but this new world of quantum mechanics, the double slit experiment, what is this doing? What is this particle doing? What is this particle wave duality? What is that? Why is this happening? Or excuse me, I shouldn't say why. That Dr. Krauss would hate me for that. How is this able to happen? What are the functions? What is the mechanism? And for me, again, being obsessed enough to keep learning, to keep going, to keep getting up every day and saying, what are you learning today? Well, I'm learning about subatomic particles and their functions, and the fact that virtual particles pop in and out of existence. Well, what are you learning today? So I kind of had fun with that for a while, and unfortunately, and this is something I have to be very honest about, this is the one thing I was dreading talking about in this interview. The cutoff for me originally to not keep studying the sciences, not keep studying physics, not keep, not doing experiments, nothing, not doing any labs, that ended fairly abruptly because of my mental illness. I didn't know for a long time that I suffer from type 1 bipolar disorder. So I was having things, my brain was acting a certain way. I wasn't diagnosed. I wasn't on any kind of medication. I wasn't doing anything, right? Therapy, nothing to help. And yet I was still trying to blaze through and be this, I'm the next scientist, right? I'm the next in line. I want to be like my mentor, Dr. Krauss. I want to be like him. I want to give these different talks, which I did for a little while, give these different talks, have these debates, making sure that I'm educating the younger generations. That's what I had in mind. And then it kind of came to a screeching halt in 2013 because I attempted suicide. It all kind of hit the fan. And I was right in the middle of trying to advance my career in science. And it hit. And the minute it hit, I said, okay, well, what do I do now? And like you said earlier with Inspiration 4, well, that was great. Well, what next? And that hit me hard. That took me a while to think about. What is next for Pat Voss? What is next for me? Because all of this that I thought I was going to have, all of these opportunities I thought I was going to be, that were going to be made available to me are gone in an instant. What do I do? So I decided to learn as much as I could about my mental illness. I wanted to learn as much as I could about bipolar disorder and how that affects, and again, going back into science, neuroscience and making sure neurobiology, making sure that I understand how my brain is working so I can be better equipped to handle life situations that might be thrown at me later, and I can still be successful, still be happy, still live a great life, right? That is when I became a member of NAMI here in Chicago, National Alliance on Mental Illness. That is why they are willing to try to back me for my petition to send me up into space. That's why. That's the biggest connection. And I've been around them since late 2013. So it's been 8 years. I think that with mental illness, people don't sometimes take it too seriously and they don't treat it very well. And then it can derail you and your life if you let it. If things get kind of out of control, that can derail you. And I'm here to say that it did for me. I had a promising career in physics ahead of me, and that was taken away in an instant. So I had to say, okay, well, what do I want to do? Still having a love of science, still tweeting about it, still talking to Dr. Krauss, still making sure that I can be successful mentally and emotionally, and also financially. Well, where does that financial come from now, right? That's when broadcasting stepped back into the picture. That's when I thought, okay, it's been over a year. I can get back out. And again, this is not a quick fix. So I want people to understand. I got back out and went back into broadcasting. And I said, okay, let's give it a try. And now it worked. Now it worked out to where I've been able to do iterations of different podcasts. I've been, like I said before, a play-by-play announcer, a PA announcer, while still giving news updates and doing what I love most, and that's informing the general public correctly and not making bold assertions on things and teaching critical thinking. That is what I care about more than anything in life. So outside of that, I found my way a little bit back into the space program and the love of the space program with talking to on an app called Clubhouse. I talked to Herb Baker, who had been with NASA for a number of years. I think it was 42 years. And Herb actually knew my relative Gus Grissom and knows his family. So I was able to talk to Herb and get fill-in information that I didn't even know about him and his family, or Gus and his family, and how that all kind of works with the space program. And that really kind of grounded me again to say, I need to be serious about this again. I can't keep letting this go. I can't keep procrastinating, because then my daughter or future generations will look at people who did procrastinate and say, well, why should I do anything? They didn't. And now I have a chance to do so. At least I've given myself the opportunity to do so. And that is what I'm here to do, is make sure that, like Inspiration 4, I'm sending myself and hopefully raising the funds for NAMI and NAMI Chicago specifically to break the stigma of mental illness, and also making sure that we're having a heck of a time doing it by being launched into space.
Phenomenal story. Phenomenal story, start to finish. Very powerful, very moving. It's hard to talk about, when it comes to mental illness. I definitely think so. And, I admire you, to be open about that. It's something we should talk about more, and very powerful to hear your comeback story from that, and finding your way back into the space industry and allowing it to inspire you and push you further. And I respect you so much for that pursuit back into it. And, again, very powerful story. So I will be right there with you and NAMI to help get you up there to space, because I think it does wonderful things for the mind. Just understanding, visualizing, but just experiencing our Earth in its entirety. It does something to the brain. I mean, pictures alone will get you to a halfway point, but the personal experience of seeing it and living it, and it does something. So that's phenomenal to hear. I just thank you for sharing that story. Very powerful. And and so with critical thinking and all of those things, being really important to you, and just really important to the foundation of the next generation and all of that. I would like to ask just your knowledge and advice, for people in the industry, pursuing the industry, or for people that don't know yet and are thinking about it or curious, about space. What's your knowledge or advice that you want to share for them?
My advice to share with them would be this one thing, that it would be to make sure that you're constantly learning. Don't quit on something. If you're looking at something and saying, hey, what about calculus? What if I want to be an engineer? What if I, how do I get this? I'll never learn this, right? That's not true. The more you look at it, the more you practice it, the more something seems like it's a barrier in your way to get into the space industry. Be obsessive about it. Don't ever let that go. Don't ever let that die. Even if you have different paths that you go on in life and you have other things that you go do, just know that you're always going to have your heart coming back to the space industry, the thing you love the most. Don't ever be deterred. And so don't think of it as I'm not doing it right now, so it'll never happen. Think of it as I'm not doing it right now, but what am I doing to keep myself in the loop? So if an opportunity presents itself, I'm ready. And that's what you need to do. I don't understand this. I don't understand that. Well, after time and in a process of learning, you might look at that same book again. You might pick up that same book. You might look through that telescope one more time and say, oh, wait, I know what that is now, or that makes sense to me now. And it's that aha moment, that big eureka type of moment that I think will mean the most for you and anyone else that is trying to get into the industry or that is in the industry. Never stop chasing the aha moment.
I couldn't agree more. It's phenomenal when you get there too. Just the pursuit of it and the passionate curiosity, and then never stop learning. And I love that. I love that advice. Very, very good mentality to have, is just to approach every day as a learning opportunity. And there are no, like, and I think this is one of my favorite sayings, is like, mistakes are only mistakes if you don't learn from them, or there are no mistakes as long as you learn from them, kind of thing. It's that pursuit, it's like you gotta accept, failure. You gotta be able to, visualize and understand that those things are going to happen, but that doesn't mean you can't learn. That doesn't mean that you can't learn more, expand your mind more. And I love that. That's great advice. Thank you. And so who should I interview next? It's phenomenal advice. And I'm really trying to almost gather this information on, people's different paths, people's different stories, and then what is it about space that, just excites them and inspires them. And I really love sharing that with the world. It's one of my favorite things about doing this show, is just getting more like stories like yours, just so powerful and moving, that just because that you have that inspiration, you feel it. And then I feel like you alone, like with your story, could get so many other people just riled up and inspired, like to be a part of the space industry. It's a wonderful thing. So, who would you like to see up here next to share their story?
One of my good friends, Sophia Gadnasser. It's Sophia and then Gadnasr. She is all over the place on social media. She's an astroparticle physicist. She's on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook and TikTok. And she does these. She is more of what you're looking for as well when you're talking about education of young people. She embodies it because she cares so deeply about it, right? So Sophia, to me, someone who I've had on my show, and just enjoyed the conversation from beginning to end, because she's so knowledgeable on things, talking about her love of space and black holes and the beginnings of the universe, or observable universe, I should say. And just her brain works in such a different way that I haven't seen in a long time. And I admire her for that. And the fact that she's been able to turn that into other things, which I'm not going to ruin, I'm going to let her tell you on her episode on here. So guys, tune into that. So Sophia, for sure, because while I can say like my mentor, Dr. Krauss, I can see if I can have him on for sure. But I think that Sophia would be your next hit.
Phenomenal. Thank you. And it's from astrophysicists to technicians to just your everyday store clerk. I want to bring all these like diverse people in here that can, share and inspire and be passionate about, the space industry and what's beyond our home planet. So thank you for the recommendation. I'll definitely be reaching out for that. So we're kind of wrapping up here, just like reaching the end, of the show. But there's one question that I just love asking everybody. Now, this is a question that I give to, my friends, my family. I mean, if you've been around me, you kind of know, like, this is just something I like to explore. I like to understand people's perspective on this question in particular.
What's your social security number? No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
What's your credit card number? No. No, my favorite question is just, what do you think about when you look up?
Mm, I like that. I like that. What do I think about when I look up? I think that when I want to have an awe-inspired moment, when I want to feel small, but in a way that inspires me to keep moving forward with life, with anything that my creativity, projects that I'm working on, anything to help the space program in general, anything that can inspire me. That is the biggest thing that can inspire me. Looking up and saying, wow, this really is the pale blue dot. This is everyone you've ever known is here and has always been here and will forever, well, not forever being here, cross my fingers.
Yeah.
But it just is interesting to see how, and I don't mean this in a bad way, how insignificant we are as a species, as a planet, but yet we have aspirations for the future. And that I love. Looking up and seeing the dippers, looking up and seeing with a higher power telescope, seeing other galaxies, being able to see other planets, other stars, just understanding that we are unique in the way that we share things with the universe itself, right? And that to me makes the most sense as why you should be awestruck when you look up. I can't think of anything better to do, and this is my favorite, and it's going to be brief. I'm going to abbreviate it for you. One of my favorite stories to tell people is when my wife and I go on cruises every year with Royal Caribbean Cruise Lines. At night, when you have a balcony room, and it's ocean view, and you look up with no light pollution. That is something, at least for myself, that I wish I could capture that moment and make it live forever. I wish I could stay in that euphoric state that I get in when things like that happen every day, every minute of every day. And I hope that humanity has a chance to eventually get to the point where every person has a chance to do that and have that moment of, I feel at peace, I feel happy, I feel inspired, and I want to move further. How can I do that?
Yeah, couldn't agree more. I'd love that opportunity myself, yeah, to be out there in the middle of the water and have no light pollution and just see the celestial sphere. I mean, you don't see all of it, but within our hemisphere, the sky at night, on one of those cruises, I'm sure is phenomenal. But yeah, very, very moving response. I enjoyed that one. Yeah, that was good. It was a good answer. Just that passionate curiosity, just never losing that. And I definitely could agree. It's a euphoric state of its own. Being able to visualize, our biosphere, our spaceship, and how it kind of constrains humanity, but only for so much longer.
Mm-hmm.
Only for so much longer. Well, what a fantastic discussion. I mean, it was really phenomenal, to hear not only your backstory and, everything that you've endured through, persevered through, and, built a life around, but on top of that, what you're doing now, I mean, pushing to go to space with an amazing follow-up for inspiration for, I mean, I think, approaching it with, the mental health awareness is a phenomenal idea. Like, that's the epitome, I think, of the modern age, is starting to be more attentive, to mental awareness, like mental health awareness. And I think it's phenomenal what you're doing, and I'm in full support. Yeah, let's get you on a rocket. So
thank you very much.
Dragon capsules look amazing. But yeah, thanks for being here, Patrick. Thanks for being a part of the Naut Normal community, and I'll definitely have to have you back on. Maybe we can talk more, cosmology and a little bit more deeply about our philosophy towards the universe and its manifestation itself. There's a lot more to talk about on that subject, but I can't thank you enough for sharing your story and being here and being a part of this. And yeah, thanks again. Thank you so much.
No problem. I had a great time being on this show, and I encourage everyone that's watching this on either my social media or your social media and then YouTube channel for Naut Normal to go subscribe, because Naut Normal is going to be normalized, pun intended, obviously. It's something that we need to be interested in as a society, because Andrew will bring different guests that you're not expecting, and just enjoy this channel.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Yeah, definitely go follow Pat Voss. Everyone on social media, get him out there. Let's sign that petition. It'll be in the description below, and let's get him to space, okay? And yeah. So with that being said, that wraps up our first episode of the new Naut Normal show. This is Naut Normal Fridays at 5 with your host, me, Andrew Shields. So there's some big announcements coming soon with Naut Normal and everything that I'm manifesting through this idea of bringing exposure and awareness of the space industry to everybody. So there's some big news coming out soon. I'll have some announcements building up here, and then we'll release them all at once for a good segment. And with that, you almost stole my motto right out from under me. We're making Naut Normal the new normal. Thank you, everybody.